there. Welcome to the Transforming Trauma Podcast, a complex trauma podcast through the NARM Training Institute. My name is Sarah Buino, and I am a psychotherapist here in Chicago and currently a NARM student. And I am so excited to share this podcast with you all. Transforming Trauma is presented by the NARM Training Institute. The Institute offers NARM practitioner trainings for mental health professionals who are looking for advanced training in complex post-traumatic stress disorder. The NeuroAffective Relational Model is a cutting-edge, innovative approach for resolving CPTSD, addressing attachment, developmental, relational, and intergenerational trauma. Fritzi Horstman is the founder and executive director of Compassion Prison Project. She's a Grammy Award-winning producer for her work on The Defiant Ones. She's also been a producer and post-producer on dozens of television projects and documentaries and has directed several films. She believes it's urgent to bring humanity and compassion to those living behind bars, and these acts will help transform our society. She has a bachelor's degree from Vassar College. Please, please, please enjoy my amazing conversation with Fritzi Horstman. Hello, Fritzi. Welcome to Transforming Trauma.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. As I was preparing for this, I was just watching the video again of the Compassion Prison Project. But before we get into that, let's start with, who are you?
Well, my name is Fritzi Horstman. My real name is Frederica, which means peaceful ruler. I'm a filmmaker and I've survived trauma. And I started the Compassion Prison Project about a year ago to bring compassion, mindfulness, creative inspiration, and childhood trauma awareness to the men and women living in prison.
And there's so much we can dig into here. I'd love to start with your history, because I know you share that actually in the video, a little bit of your history. So what led you to wanting to do the Compassion Prison Project?
So the first part is I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And that woke me up to that I was traumatized. I had no idea. I was walking around a nervous wreck, full of anxiety. I didn't know that that was my trauma. And that epiphany kind of reframed my whole life. And then in September 2018, I walked into a prison in another program, Hustle 2.0, which helps the incarcerated population learn about their own capabilities, creating business opportunities. And it's wonderful. And the leader, Kat Hoke, is amazing. And when I walked in, I just recognized myself in the men and that they were traumatized and that it was the trauma that led them to prison. It wasn't their inherent evilness or their bad. They weren't bad people. They were traumatized. And I would actually add to that, anyone who may appear evil or seem evil probably has head trauma or some kind of brain disorder, because we are humans. We came on this earth, I believe, to find love and find out what love means. So when I walked in there, I just saw myself in them, in their trauma and in their struggle to find out who they were. And then I said, when are we coming back? And she said 6 months. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, she's an activator. She gets people really activated about this prison cause. She activated me, and I thought, I can't wait 6 months. So I went and researched kindness and compassion, what that meant. Didn't really know what I was doing. And January 5th, 2019, I walked into Kern Valley State Prison and just told 25 guys that I love them. And then I went from there.
Wow. Tell me more about how that went, because one of the things I was really struck with in the video, and I work in addiction, so sometimes I get people who appear very hard and vulnerability is not necessarily their language, right? And so sometimes there's a barrier there, and I'm really curious if there were any barriers for you, or if because you walk in going, hey, this is my experience, I have similar experiences to you, that automatically kind of comes down.
I think shared trauma here's the thing. In our society, we do not talk about our trauma. We don't talk about our imperfections. We're supposed to be perfect, and it's a lie. And that's why the circle is so important. The Compassion Trauma Circle is because we get to see our shared humanity. So that's the first thing I basically tell them is I've been traumatized. I was, all the things you heard me say, and I know most of you are traumatized. And the thing that that I also discovered doing the circle, one of the guys didn't walk in the circle. He had none of those ACE test traumas. And I thought, he's a gang member. He's got all the signs of everybody else in this room. What's going on? And I said, do you live in extreme poverty? And he said, yes. And that's toxic stress, which is the same symptoms. It shows up as the same symptoms of trauma. So that was a big wake-up call, so that when I did the circle, when we filmed it, I knew to add extreme poverty, because that was a key. That's something that isn't in the ACE test, which I believe is really an important thing to point out, is extreme poverty creates an enlarged amygdala, a prefrontal cortex that goes offline, and all the hypervigilance that you can ask for. When I learned that, that was like the key. That was the last trauma circle I did at Kern Valley State Prison. And then I was having a hard time. They only wanted 4 filmmakers to go in, and I wanted a bigger circle, and I knew I needed more coverage. We ended up bringing 23 filmmakers at Lancaster State Prison. They opened their doors, their hearts, and their community to us. So, it was a shame, because those guys, I owe it to them to bring their stories forward. So I will go back to Kern Valley State Prison and honor those men and add them to the film. I'm sure now that this has happened, there'll probably be more of a porous situation with the prison. So they'll be more receptive to me coming in there and causing a mess, because that's what I'm plan to do. I plan to create a big mess in this society. This is a mess, and we need to unearth this trauma, bring it out to the open. There's no shame in having trauma. And here's the key. The people that are abusing their children right now, they were traumatized. So we've got a situation of everyone hiding and not coming forward. Okay, you're abusing your kids. No shame. Just stop.
Right.
There's no shame. I love you. Let's get some help. Let's get in there and unearth all of this dark, wretched life that you've been living. Because when you're hurting your child, you're hurting yourself. There's no doubt in whatever you've done. And, we want to shame people. We want to shame people deeply for what they've done, but it's been done to them. And one of those symptoms of trauma is reenacting the trauma that was done to them. So it's a symptom. We have to stop shaming people. And, same with our celebrities, we got to stop it. Let's just stop it. Let's start forgiving, and let's start healing. Let's start healing the wretched past that our country was founded on.
And I want to take that thread and pull it all the way out. But before we do that, let's go back a little bit. And can you share with people, I'm sure a lot of listeners already know what the ASA study is, but can you talk a little bit more about that for folks who may not know?
Yes, it was created by Vince Folletti and Robert Anda in 1998 as a Kaiser study. And they noticed that they made a link to adult diseases to childhood adversity. They were mostly white middle-class people, and 70% of those people had, I believe, 4 or more ACEs. I'm not sure about that, but what we know is 4 or more ACEs leads to early death. My parents both died. My father died at 61. My mother died at 69. And I know they were both terribly traumatized based on their behavior. I mean, I don't know the extent of my father's because I didn't know to ask.
Right.
But my mother said she would have been a criminal. She wrote to me, I would have been a criminal if I hadn't, I don't know, she had some support. I have to reread that letter, but she had that extent of trauma, and they smoked all day long. And I used to like, why are people smoking? I don't get this. And it's a way for them to feel good. And God, we have to, same with addicts. That's the thing with addicts. They're addicted and they're surviving. So we cannot.
Right.
No, this is their survival method.
Exactly. I'm laughing because that's exactly how we talk about it in NARM, is that all of these are survival strategies. Sometimes in mental health we say coping strategy, but no, it's survival.
And we're punishing them for surviving. They figured out a way to get through. My father was an alcoholic. He figured out a way to get through. And I was addicted. I was a bulimic. That's an addiction. I acted out all through my 20s and 30s. That's an addiction. I ate food unconsciously. It's addiction. I drank wine, a glass a night. Maybe it didn't destroy my life, but there was a need to stop the buzzing, the
Yeah.
anxiety that was in my body. And again, no shame. I mean, here I am though. I did my work and the trauma is,
Yeah.
is abating. But all these addicts walk around feeling shame, which is why they have this hardcore.
Mm.
They don't feel worthy, and we've got to stop. Same with homeless people. There's no shame in being homeless. There's no shame being incarcerated because it was an event that happened. And we need to retool this system so that we can bring trauma, mental health services to our incarcerated population.
Well, one of the things that really struck me in the video that I think also correlates with the thread I want to pull about our country, the way that our country was founded, is you say very plainly, you say, I have done all of these things as a white woman. So I got to get out of jail free card. And I think in the video, everyone was a person of color. All the incarcerated people were.
There were a couple of white guys.
A couple of white guys, yeah, but mostly people of color, right?
Yeah.
So the disparity of the way that we're treated based on our socioeconomic status or our gender or whatever it is literally gives some of us a get out of jail free card.
Yes. Well, and I may re-edit that because there are white women in prisons as well. And I'm in Los Angeles, so there's less white women in prisons. But if you go into Kentucky, I don't know what state. So they don't get out of jail free cards because they're white. I got one because I wasn't completely impoverished. Right. I think that's actually more correct. And the woman, whose house got robbed because of my act, she decided not to press charges. So
wow. So compassion also kept you out of prison.
Well, and she also knew how traumatized I was. She knew the trauma in my family. Yeah. So compassion. Yes. See, here I am doing some good stuff. All those guys, all those women that are in prison, there are resources. They actually have walked the walk of shame and trauma and annihilation, and they can go back to their communities and bring that information back. They've been to hell. We need to send them back now, healthy and, rehabilitated. And I mean, they did something really bad. They destroyed communities and families and mothers and fathers and sisters. They did something devastating. We cannot ever forget what they did. And we can't continue to shame them and revile them. We have to, as a society, forgive, because we also are culpable for those acts. By all, all the redlining we've done, Jim Crow, this immigration, all this policy of poverty, keeping people poor, we are responsible. So who are we? Who are we to say, shame on you? So no shame. We're all forgiven, but let's move forward now. Let's take accountability for our part in all of this, which is, I believe, the piece that we keep forgetting is that this is this is us, this is our doing.
Right.
We voted for Clinton and he created this crime bill, which has just destroyed thousands of people's lives, destroyed them. We voted that. So we're in it. We're in it. No shame, but we got to undo it, and we got to do it quick because these people are rotting. I mean, at Kern Valley State Prison, where my guys live, they're not mine, but the guys live. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hearing that you love them, and I feel the same. I always say that my whatever, because it's out of love. Yeah,
it's
that
love.
connection.
And I want to respect them and give them the dignity that I believe is theirs. Where the guys that I've been working with live, they're in their cells for 23 hours a day. Is that how we treat? Is that how we want to treat anyone in our lives? Would you do that to anyone in your family, in your community? Would you do that to the homeless person you see on the street? Who would you do that to? Nobody. So why are we doing this? Why aren't we giving them, EMDR, tapping, all the tools that we have? We have so many tools now. We're just beginning to understand PTSD, but everyone in that prison has PTSD, and that's including the guards, and it's including the staff. They hear of these staff assaults. They're all freaked out. It's all, this is not, no, we need a reboot, an immediate reboot. And they say it's going to take a long time to turn the ship around. Well, too bad. It's going to take now. I can go off.
I love your passion. And I think, the interesting gift that COVID-19 may be giving us is a hard reset, right? And like you said, this other prison may be more open-hearted to let you come in now because of this. And I'm curious if you had a magic wand and could, make all prisons trauma-informed, like, what do you want to see? Oh, I love your eyes are lighting up. I wish everyone could see. You're like, hee.
So my vision is 3 years, wellness centers. All prisons are wellness centers. And the population, yeah, that's the vision. The population is decreased by 2/3 because beginning now, we start putting trauma information. First off, the information needs to get to everyone that they're highly traumatized. So it's going to take 3 years only because, well, it's happening now. So I don't even know why I'm talking about 3 years. It's happening now. I mean, California Department of Corrections wants to put the PSA we just made into all the prisons. And I have some people on my team now are starting to make phone calls to other prisons, and we're going to get that video to every prison and ask them what we need to do to get that video into every single prison. Because when people start realizing they're traumatized, they forgive themselves. They need to start there. And that shame just goes away. That shame dissolves. The formula, though, I say there is no shame, but there's accountability. So you can't just say, oh, everybody's no more shame. It's like, okay, no shame. You did something wrong. We got to figure out a way for you to give back and change the dynamic that you created. We need to build a bridge back to your community. We need to return you as a human, the human that you are, not the felon, not the criminal.
Right, the human
that you are.
Yeah.
And welcome you back, because you're going to come and heal. I mean, I'm watching all these men and women who have been incarcerated, and all they want to do is change the world. That's all they want to do. I'm watching them. One guy's giving daily podcasts, raising the awareness. One guy, I mean, they're just incredible men and women, just extraordinary. And when you see someone as a beautiful human being, they become one. It's a simple algorithm. But you see someone as a piece of crap, that's what they show up as. So, I anoint everyone. Everyone is magnificent. So I see you as magnificent. And that's simple. And it's true. Why would I see anything but your divine magnificence? The ego wants to judge and say, oh, this person's too old, or this person's black. But that's all just a fear paradigm. And there's no shame for the fear paradigm. It has to be acknowledged, because it keeps coming up. And I have to question all my judgments that pop out, or like towards myself, towards my family, towards my neighbor. And back to center, they're beautiful human beings. That's it. End of story. End of story.
Yeah.
Even the sociopaths. Okay, so sociopaths and child molesters, this is the hard part. This is the really hard part, because this is where, like, in myself, I draw a line like I can't reconcile that until it is reconciled, until we can love every part of us. This behavior is going to keep going on. It's the secret. It's the shame. I mean, that's deep shame. But if we continue to shame them, it festers and grows. And look at the porn and the child trafficking thing that has emerged from all the shame.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
When there's not space to, like you said earlier, name the trauma, right? Because I hope I'm saying this right. I believe that they found that a lot of people who end up becoming sociopaths also have a brain injury, in addition to complex trauma, right? And listeners, I hope as you're hearing this, you're understanding the nuance. I'm really holding that, Fritzi, that you're sharing the nuance of, the actions are wrong and there's accountability that needs to be had there. And yet we can't just write off these people, because then that is dismissing their humanity.
Well,
and neglecting noting the trauma.
It's dismissing our own humanity.
Yeah.
That's the key. We are forgetting that with every act of injustice that we allow to go through, that's one more piece of injustice in our own souls. We all know something's deeply, deeply wrong with what we're doing, and no one is doing anything about it. Nobody's saying anything. And it's got to be dealt with. We've got to recognize our own shame that we have. I mean, this goes back to slavery. This goes back to the doctrine of the Pope, who said,
yes,
it's okay to rape and pillage in the name of God.
And just for listeners, I just heard about that recently, but essentially that was the founding document of our country, is that the Pope from, was it Spain, wrote the decree that anyone who came to conquer, quote unquote, America could do whatever the hell they wanted to do. And that's what this country was founded on.
Yes, founded on violence and domination. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which violence and domination sound familiar? Prison system, school system, medical, like dominating. I mean, even how we legislate is dominating. It's like, oh, the poor people can't have this. We have to make sure Black people can't have this. It's all domination. It's all ways of creating another, which is a way to sell more products, make us all feel less than, make us all feel insignificant and needing to just, it's that hungry ghost that Gabor Mate and Buddha talks about. It never gets filled because the roots are not addressed. The roots are our trauma, but it's also our ancestral trauma, our social trauma. We all are traumatized by slavery. We still haven't come to terms with slavery. I'm culpable. Everyone, every white person is culpable because their ancestors, until we basically, what I've come to know is when you heal the trauma of the past, it's healed. It actually is retroactive. It goes psychically back into, I can actually feel what that would be like when we all take responsibility, say, I'm sorry, my ancestors were so traumatized to do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. We were all traumatized. I mean, when you are beating your slave, you are traumatizing yourself.
Yep.
There is no way you can do what you're doing to a human and not do it to yourself.
I wanted to reflect again to kind of tie it in with NARM. A lot of what we talk about in NARM is recreating connection with self so that you can have that authentic connection with others. And so as you talk about, you can't do something harmful to somebody else without harming yourself. That's completely aligned with how we feel about healing from trauma from a NARM perspective.
Wow. I don't know where my information comes from. Honestly, I don't. It's weird, but I get this circle. It's all circles, healing circles, the circles of abuse, but also the circles of love. Like when you love somebody with your heart, it comes right back to you and it can't not. And we're so afraid of that act of being vulnerable because we've gotten so burned in the past. My little girl's heart was so open and she just got so trampled on. So, repairing all that trauma is so hard. It's been hard. And thank God I got a dog, because that dog, I asked for a dog. I knew, my little girl knew I needed some love, because that was all. And so many people out there I just feel so sad for all of them. And for all of us, because, their pain is, I feel their pain. I know how wretched it is. And yet there is no shame, right? If we can remember that and just spread that words, just so everyone can know about ACEs, what an ACE is, just that, and what it does to the spirit and the body and the mind and our behavior. It changes
Yes.
our behavior, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We're friggin' insane, you know? Just all that buying,
Mm-hmm.
all that recycling we're not doing, all that abuse, because we're so abused, and we're abused by the media, we're abused by our anger. And when we're angry at inequality, that whole dynamic of inequality and seeing rich people just ignore everything. But see, they're
Mm-hmm.
traumatized too. They're just
Right.
they are.
Right. I know. I'm shaking my head and like, yes, yes. I'm with you.
So no shame, rich people, and we need help. I don't think you'll ever get enough. So just try it. Try giving, because that fills it up. The giving is what fills it up, because that's love.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the situation with COVID-19 being a really clear example of, if we want to create compassion for people who are in prisons, right? If we think about the trauma they've been through, but let's just say poverty alone. Let's pretend everyone in prison was just suffering from poverty. A lot of people who are responding to COVID-19 and these shutdowns by protesting are fearing poverty, right? And so I think it's interesting to watch people's reactions to the threat of something, and kind of the insanity that comes with it. The ways that people are acting out right now and acting in all come from trauma. And so how could we not have compassion and recognize how connected we are to these folks who were suffering from that their whole life? Of course, if you were in poverty, you would be stealing. Duh. What? Like, how else are you going to get your needs met, right? Again, it's survival.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, well, here's the thing. What One of the people on my team, he's a vet, a war vet, and he's gotten really triggered by COVID because
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
an unseen threat. So when a person who's traumatized doesn't feel safe, all kinds of things get activated. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is the thing. Prisons are just, they're not safe. I mean,
Right.
the men I work with, they say, you know, I worry about my life every day. I mean, the fact that they could be killed any day because everybody's traumatized. We're not a community. It's not a community. I mean, it is a community, but it's not community centric. They're not creating a community.
It's punitive community instead of being loving and compassionate.
Yes, which is, it almost seems like an ancient thought. It is an ancient thought that,
It is.
you know, I think we're all rebooting now. And I'm really glad this video, this PSA came out when it did. I was really like, when we were editing it, I'm like, who's going to ever see this now? Everybody's worried about COVID.
Mm.
And, you know, over 1 million people have seen it, which is like crazy. It's so, I mean, it's not crazy. It's magnificent. And I want everybody to see it so they can really understand those men are us. Those men taking steps, because they're taking steps, we're taking them with them because they're ours. We have to reclaim that part of ourself that we've abandoned. You know, we've abandoned these men and we've abandoned these women, and they're ours because we're all in this together. There is no separation. And the politics want to separate us. They want to find every way we can all divide.
That makes us easier to conquer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautifully said, divide and conquer.
Right.
But why do we need to conquer anything? The violence in our society it's everywhere. And it starts with our own acts at home. You know, the way we talk to our children, the way we talk to ourselves. You know, I used to hear myself criticize my age as I was aging, or
Mm.
criticize, you know, a little piece of fat I'd see on my body, or, you know, whatever. But I'm just alive. What do I expect of myself? I don't really know what I expect of myself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I dye my hair. I started that. Now I don't know how to go back, but
Right.
I just can't. I can't I
Yep.
can't shift that, but I mean, I can do whatever I want. The thing is, let's watch the violence that we're allowing in our homes, because that's where we start. That's how the change really happens, is be the change you want to see in the world. Well, let's look at the violence that's just in our homes. Why do I need to buy that thing?
Well, and in our heads, you said it so beautifully, the way that you were judging yourself and pressuring yourself to be different. That's a big thing that we talk about in NARM is there's all of these shoulds that are a product of essentially having a rupture in the attachment with our caregiver. And so it's easier to blame self than it is to blame our parents. And so then all of a sudden feeling bad and quote unquote being bad and telling ourselves we're bad is more comfortable. Essentially, it becomes more of a habit.
Yeah. It's a wiring. And it's a loop that we can't get out of. Addiction is an interesting thing because I think addiction defined is something that you do repeatedly knowing it'll destroy your life. I'm addicted to coffee, but it's not destroying my life.
Right.
So
Yep.
to clarify what I'm seeing as addiction, it destroys you, but it also quiets that pain. But the thing that really will quiet the pain is just being quiet and loving yourself, which I understand. I mean, no shame if you can't get there. And it's a good thing to think about. 2 of the guys in my class stopped using heroin. And I think it's because of some of the work we were doing, just because they felt connected.
Wow. It's incredible.
One of the guys, though, and this is what this prison did, it makes me cry just thinking about him. They threw him in the shoe he was using. They caught him using heroin and they threw him in the shoe. Now, you've just isolated a man. He just demonstrated to you that he's feeling like that he needs help. And now you've just made his situation worse.
Yep.
So no shame, but let's stop doing that. Keep him in my program so he can heal, so he can come in and talk to us about why he did such a thing. We need to stop the stigma of addiction now, and the stigma of homelessness, and which is similar, and the stigma of poverty. I mean, all of anything, there is no shame to being alive. That's it. There's no shame. You matter. You matter in any state that you're in. Because when you have that little bit of information, when you have that, wait, I matter. Wait, I heard that. I matter.
Right.
From that, healing can begin.
And I believe that was the first statement that you made in the circle in your video, is how many of you were in a home where you didn't know you were loved, you were told you didn't matter, essentially. And so then for you to go in and give that gift to these people who are incarcerated and say, no, you do matter, and I see your humanity.
But just remember, I'm giving that to myself too.
Right. And I see you're touched by this. The work that you're doing is just really incredible. And I'm so excited that you were willing to come on this podcast and talk about it so that we can all support you as well. So how can we, as a Transforming Trauma community, help the Prison Compassion Project?
Wow. Well, I think definitely spread the word, keep sharing that video. That would be an amazing thing. Right now, we're developing a workbook that we want to send with the video to all the men in prison. So I don't know if any of you have any trauma information. That would be great if you had some. I don't know, but right now I feel like I'm a vessel, a container bringing in this information that I need to receive it and then send it out. So any tips on transforming trauma that you guys have come up with, we would definitely love that. So spreading the awareness. I want ACEs by the end of this year to be a household word. I want it to be viral. I want people to know what an ACE is. I want them to know what their ACE score is. And I want that to be the launching point of groups and communities and awareness and no shame. that
Yeah.
has to go with it, because we got to see each other, see each other for not what we've done, not what we've made, not what we're wearing, but for our beautiful souls, just being alive and being, like a flower. You don't care what a flower's done. Just look at that flower, and even the ugly weeds, those are beautiful too. I was looking at the weeds yesterday. I was like, they're kind of cool too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who are we to judge? Who are we to judge? Ever, ever.
Well, and what your work and also the work that we're doing in NARM has really proven is that there is capacity for change and healing and growth, right? So we're not all lost, even though it can feel sometimes like there's nothing that can be done and it's hopeless. It's not. It's not hopeless.
No.
And thanks to your work and all others out there who are working to heal trauma with people, that's what it's about.
Yeah, we got to get to the roots. I remember in 8th grade, we went and we were weeding a garden, and we learned about getting down to the roots and pulling those out.
Yep.
But it was deep. You really had to find where it was lodged. And I don't know if it's the easiest road, but it's the necessary road. But talking about it without shame, that's the thing. I keep going back to it, because the shame is embedded in our society. And that Schadenfreude, when people get shamed, I know that our brains light up.
Yeah, we can experience pleasure from watching the pain of others. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and punishment. Yeah, and punishment also lights up our brains. So we have to be aware of that. Just watching the news, watching violence. We want to watch violence. I can't watch horror movies anymore. I can't watch violence anymore, because I think it's getting healed, so I'm not attracted to it.
Right.
And
yeah.
It's an interesting thing. I used to love violence, but now I just can't do it anymore. I'm just like, I don't want to be in that thing. So, that's an interesting thing to observe in yourself too. Do you want to watch violence? What's happening chemically to you? Start observing your behavior that we don't even know is our behavior. Those are the questions. Why do we need violence?
Well, and if we go back to creating more trauma information to help people understand how it impacts them, like you said, I wonder if we would be less attracted to things that do traumatize us.
Yeah.
And if we're able to hold everything with a sense of just noticing that it's there instead of judging it and demonizing it and shaming it, how healing that can be to just be with it. Well, it's been so amazing to talk to you. And will you share, folks, where they can find the video and where they can learn more about your work?
Yes, our video it's on our website at compassionprisonproject.org. And we're going to be putting out another video very soon called The Symptoms of Trauma. So we can start getting that into the conversation. Then one about forgiveness. It will all be in the final film, but since we've been thwarted in our filming goals, we're going to just keep this conversation going and share the video if you find it moving, and just keep sharing it, because who knows who you'll reach, and that person may stop. That person may think twice before they hit their little baby. That act could change the world, and if you know of somebody who's hurting and you see some abuse going on, say something gently and beautifully. There's no shame, but let's start healing this, and let's start really examining our own violence and really seeing, how we're contributing to all of this. It's an energetic field. This violence is an energetic field. Yeah. And we can replace it and transform it to a loving field. And so, as you do your work at home, it actually matters. It actually changes the world. Just start loving yourself. Start there. Just start there. Just let us be glorious. We are so glorious.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a heartfelt conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. If you want to learn more, you can go to the show notes or visit us at www.narmtraining.com/transformingtrauma. The Transforming Trauma podcast is brought to you by the NARM Training Institute. NARM practitioner trainings for mental health professionals are offered across North America and internationally. We are so excited to share the power of healing from complex trauma with all of you. Your listenership means a lot to us on the Transforming Trauma team. Do you feel inspired to help bring greater trauma healing to the world? If so, we'd like to invite you to share the Transforming Trauma podcast with others. It might not feel like a significant contribution, but we believe every share and every additional listener matters. You can be part of the trauma-informed movement just by sharing our podcast with your colleagues, friends, and family. Our intention is to make this trauma work accessible to individuals and communities around the world who are suffering, so that they have support, guidance, and a friendly reminder that healing from complex trauma is possible. Thank you to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for producing and editing, to Tori Essex for our album art, and to Brad Kammer for the creation of this podcast. We look forward to building community and connection with you and changing the world by transforming trauma.